Hey, podcast listeners. Welcome back to the second part of episode 17, talking about swifts, wall lizards, dolphins in harbors, and the bigger concept of biophilia.
So my name is Mauro Ferri. Mauro is the name, Ferri the family name. I met first time in early 80 the common swift species, the Apus apus, and its particular mutual relationship with the human here in Italy. That's a very, very particular relationship. The nest habit, behavior, is very interesting because at present in Italy, most of the population, quite the 98%, 99%, nest in the roofs of the traditional roofs of downtowns and traditional houses in Italy, where we use coppo tiles or Mediterranean tiles. They are a particular kind of tile, curved. These hollow, the roofs have a lot of hollows in the first line of the tiles around the roofs. And the swifts use mainly these ones to nest.
Wow.
A little part of the population use the holes in the monuments as churches, palaces, bell towers, castles, towers, and scaffold holes, where the scaffold holes remain. Is a particular part, a little part of the population, but it's very significant because when it happens, and often hundreds and hundreds of pairs stay all together in one buildings. This is very, very spectacular. A very little part of the population nests till now in artificial structures built since medieval times here in Italy for swifts, and called here Swifts Towers.
So why would you intentionally build a nesting place for swifts?
Of course, providing artificial nests for swifts was intentional and was restricted to particular swift keepers that were not the most part of the population. They were single individuals sharing these particular habits they did to collect meat of birds. The most of the birds of the swifts, the most of the nesting of swifts on the roofs is accidental, non-intentional.
Okay.
So people do not know where swifts do nest. They only know that swifts are characteristics of downtowns. They saw a lot of swifts grouping or patrolling in the sky during the summer, but most of the people do not know where they nest.
But
this is dramatic.
It is dramatic. Let me ask though, the part that was surprising to me, it was that people eat them for meat.
Oh yes, collecting bird for meat purpose was common in these two parts of Europe, central northern Italy for swifts at the beginning, and then this habit was shifted to the sparrows here in Italy. And in Netherlands and Belgium and northern France, this habit was for starling and sparrows.
So what is happening today to the buildings where swifts have nested?
Okay, it is dramatic. Nowadays in UK, quite half of the population of swifts is wiped out because the roofs restoration and insulation following modern inns for energetic managing of the buildings.
Yeah.
So we have a progressive, slow but progressive and reversible mechanism causing the roofs are restored or rebuilt using other device, other kind of tiles, or sealing the old copper tiles. And this made a disaster because roofs by roofs, Swifts lose habitats. And this is very, very dramatic. In the next year, we will see the collapse of the population if people will have not the chance to offer to the birds new opportunity of nesting, for example, in nest boxes to be hanged in the wall or to be built inside the wall in the new construction.
Okay.
It is possible. We have a lot of opportunity. We have also private company in Germany and in UK offering devices to be used in new buildings for this purpose.
Okay.
In Italy, the situation is not so good. We started 2 years ago, actually, to say something to people. We invented also a yearly event we called him Festival of dei Rondoni, the Festival for the Swifts, and we call for people observing Swifts around their homes at the end of June, which is the best period to observe Swifts here in Italy. And in this time we discuss, we offer from websites and from media information about the needs of the Swifts for nesting, offering also hints for nest boxes.
Okay.
This is a very low mechanism. A little part of the colony, I said, nest in scaffold holes. This is the most dramatic argument of this phenomenon because municipality and private owners fight against pigeons. They fear the pigeons' nests in the holes of the walls. And the municipality and private owners practice this particular kind of war against the pigeons in a very severe way. So they seal all the holes. They seal completely. Now, me and colleagues invented a method to reduce selectively the entrance of the holes to prevent the entrance of the pigeons and let swifts, bats, and little passerines and jackals and lizards enter in the walls. We called this operation protecting living monuments. And,
okay.
People like very much this one. And then my personal little war is to spread information about the last legacies, about Swift towers, and I suggest things to restore and to manage ancient Swift towers to host Swifts nowadays.
Yeah.
I have some good specimens of restoration working.
Okay. You know, when we often think of habitat as either natural or not natural, but here we have a species that depends on artificial, on buildings.
So it's a natural habit, it is a natural behavior of the swifts addressed unintentionally to be strictly tied to the buildings.
Yes.
So this is natural or artificial.
Yes.
It's a mix of both.
Okay. And so
But we have no chance for these species in natural habitats because we have no forests. So we have now woodlands and local forests, but all trees towering over the canopy, as they do in Lapland or in Białowieża forest, are very, very rare individuals nowadays. So the populations of swifts can't depend from this. They can't. They have to depend only from buildings. for the next century, I guess.
What if we reimagine buildings as, like I said in the beginning, not just for people, but as habitat places for, let's say, swifts? And what if we said to the designers from the very beginning, we want this building to also house a colony of, I don't know, several thousand swifts, and then you design it in such a way that it provides a chimney-like space, maybe not literally a chimney, but a chimney-like space, just to their liking.
Yep.
And what if that would be possible to make this kind of cohabitation? I know that green roofs, if they're designed correctly, you can have ecosystems up there where you have birds of prey and you have beehives and you have all kinds of things happening.
And you have flowering plants to draw on butterflies and beetles and whatnot.
Right, you have insect life. So you could turn that into the vertical. Yes, it's an energy efficient building. Yes, it's all those things, but it's also a building that sustains life.
Yeah. Another animal that we think of, it's funny, this is something that we'll cover later on in an episode about wall lizards as an...
Yeah, I listened to part of that wall lizard. That was pretty cool. That Maastricht is actually very close to Aachen, where I'm originally from. So that's very, very close to where I grew up.
Well, my name is Frank Stigmans, and I'm a master at biology from the Netherlands. Yeah, sure. A wall lizard is, of course, a reptile, a lizard, a small lizard. And here in Holland, we've got only 4 lizards living. And this is the lizard that adores the sun and the warmth the most of all the lizards living in the Netherlands. That's why it's living only in the southern part of the Netherlands. So that is our most sunny and climatic warmest place of our country. And for the rest of Europe, it lives more to the south, more in Italy, in France, some in Belgium. And really, the population we have in the Netherlands is the northernmost of its range, its original range. So it's kind of like the Eskimos of wall lizards living in Europe.
And in the Netherlands, can you talk a little bit about what kind of habitat you find it in?
Yep. The wall lizards, because they are so fond of warmth, and they really need warmth for their eggs to develop. It's like we call it a culture follower. So it follows humans in this part of its range. And that's why it's living in Maastricht on walls, or old city walls, and they have been there for hundreds of years already. And these are especially the southern exposed walls. They are really warm. They get really warm, and they are bound to this type of habitat, and they live originally nowhere else in the Netherlands.
What was their natural habitat like in the Netherlands before humans built walls that they now call their natural habitat?
Well, I suppose they are really at their northernmost range in the Netherlands, and naturally they live more in the valleys of rivers and streams. They have these sunny, exposed slopes, so that's where wall lizards live. And when you go more to the south in Europe, you will find rocky slopes. But here in the Netherlands, we don't really have rocky slopes. The slopes in our country are, more like lime and sand substrate. So I do believe they reached Holland through the stream valleys of one of the rivers, but they found a good place to live only because humans built city and created these city walls. So I suppose without these city walls here at their northernmost range, they wouldn't be able to survive, I think. Yeah, well, I was telling the wall lizards live on these city walls, but they also, from these areas, they colonized other areas in the city of Maastricht. And one of these areas is a railroad. and but there haven't been trains riding there since the 80s. So it got really colonized by vegetation, and it got and it kind of grew into a forest or so. But you had these substrate of railroad tracks is of course rocky, so this warms up, and this is suitable for wall lizards as well. So the wall lizards started colonizing this railroad from the 80s, and they have been living there just fine because there were no trains riding there. And then a couple of years back, in I think 2007, they had this plan to revitalize this railroad again. So freight trains had to ride there. And of course, the wall lizards, well, in our country, it's a protected species. So the company who was interested in revitalizing this railroad track, had to live up to the standards of the law and deal with this protected species. That's where we came in as the biologists, and we made a plan together how they could revitalize this railroad and at the same time keep safe this population of wall lizards living there.
So what was the, I'll call it the mitigation project or the temporary home? Talk about what you guys did to save the wall lizards while they were renovating or revitalizing the railroad.
The revitalizing of the railroad involved renewing all the substrate there. So really, they resetted the habitat of the lizard. But before they did this, we cooperated with them and we built walls for the wall lizards basically. So just a few meters alongside the railroad track, just 10 or 15 meters or so, we created as much as 25 walls with a total length of a kilometer or so. And we translocated the wall lizards from their old habitat on the old railroad track to these new walls. And after that, the company was able to dig away the old substrate of the railroad track and renew it with new tracks and new railways.
I know it can be hard getting animals to leave their old homes and sort of adapt to a new site. What were the results like?
Yeah, well, after translocating, we got most of the population, over 100 adult wall lizards. And the time between building their new walls and translocating them was too short. We knew this in advance, but there was no other way. So the walls were just there, just half a year or so. And we knew they were too fresh. There wasn't much vegetation on, and there wasn't enough food for them to be found. So we monitored the population and how it evolved in the years afterwards, and we saw there was just about 20 or 30 adults left in the area, and the other ones must have fled. And we have been monitoring since, so in total now for 8 years, and we see promising results only from year 5 on. So this is just after 5 years, the wall lizards really accepted their new home and started reproducing in sufficient numbers like we were hoping.
Okay. Also another question about the wall lizards. I mean, I'm familiar with them in the United States where they're an exotic species, but they seem to spread out in residential areas. I mean, I guess they've been there a long time, but in Maastricht, do you find them sort of dispersing and sort of setting up in smaller populations in like people's gardens and on the sides of their houses and that kind of thing?
Well, no, not really.
Okay.
No, they have this large area of these ancient city walls.
Yeah.
There is a large population, hundreds of wall lizards living there, and they are wandering around, but they are not really colonizing surrounding gardens or so, not really. They did colonize this railroad. And another funny thing is, because you're mentioning the wall lizard is an exotic species in the United States, but it's exotic species in other parts of the Netherlands as well. And we see a large amount of populations popping up all over the country in the last 15 years. So we do have 12 or so exotic populations at the moment, and we did a genetic analysis of these populations, and most of them we can prove that they are from France or from Italy and from other parts of their range. So really, transport through trade or deliberate introduction is really going on at the moment too. So they are living in other parts, and they are living there in gardens and in really urban areas.
That's interesting. And I wanted to wrap up with one extra thing. You mentioned, or the paper was from, and I think the organization involved. It's called, is it Ravon?
Yeah, true. Ravon. It's
okay.
Reptile, Amphibian, Fish Conservation Netherlands, we're called. Ravon is a NGO, so we are both a professional organization. We do projects, and they're all aimed at studying and protecting our native reptile, amphibian, and fish species. And an important part of an important tool for us is a large database we have, and this is filled with distribution data from all these species from all over the country, and we collaborate with many hundreds of volunteers. We have a whole network of volunteers throughout the country, and they report to us sightings of our species. They do also standardized monitoring for years on. So we really have a good view on distribution and trends of our species. Okay. This is an important part of an important tool for us for conservation of our species.
Synanthropic organism.
Did you have wall lizards where you grew up?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. All right. Mm-hmm. We have, so they're not native. They're native to, this group of lizards is native to Europe and North Africa, but a lot of them have managed to colonize cities in the United States. Mm-hmm. And so there's a colony that used to exist near the Philadelphia Zoo in the middle part of the last century, middle part of the 1900s. And it apparently just died out on its own. But apparently was released from either some pets got loose or some animals being shipped to the zoo got loose. And so there was a wall lizard colony in West Philly, of all places, like a mile from where we're sitting right now. And then more recently, a colony got established starting in Long Island near New York City, has expanded into New York City and then down into New Jersey.
This is so cool, right?
Yeah, and something similar happened in Cincinnati with actually a different, closely related species of wall lizard, where someone was on vacation in, I forget, it's Florence, somewhere in Italy, took some home, let them go in Cincinnati, and in like the 50s or 60s,
Italian.
And they've spread since then. For in the States, they're thought of as this kind of as this very innocuous exotic animal. Like they don't seem to harm any native species. They like walls. They stick to walls, which doesn't imply much competition.
They don't bite. They're not poisonous. So they're interesting.
They're around.
Yeah.
And so, but then in Europe, where they're part of the natural heritage, just what caught me about the paper that this is all that this interview came from was just this idea of preserving natural habitat. But then I said, wait a second, the natural habitat's a wall. It's a railroad embankment.
Yeah, but that's what I said before, that if you think of high rises as, the birds look at them as rock formations or mountains, I think that's how we should look at them. That's how we should start to design them, so that they can have a skin or a periphery that can be full of nesting places and full of, insect attracting places and green roofs and green facades and so forth. But the awe aspect and the sense of wonder is so important, I think.
I got asked to do this thing, and then it was just a comedy of errors.
So Tony, just to talk a little bit as our bird expert about what does a swift look like? What does it do?
a cigar with wings. So they're somewhat closely related to hummingbirds. A lot of people think that they function similarly to swallows. So a lot of people think they're related, but they're not. Yeah. Swallows are a true songbird, and swifts are not. They're not close related at all, and they're even more aerial than the swallows. Some will never even touch the ground.
This is something that like blew my mind when I learned it, and I had to stop. I cut it out in one of the interviews, but I had to stop. I think it might have been the Italian guy, Mauro Ferri, where he made some offhand comment about, they never.
Yeah, I know. I stopped with that too.
And I was like, wait a second, did you just say they never touch the ground? And it's like, basically, except for when they're nesting, they're in the air all the time.
Yeah, how's that even energetically possible, right? How can they even do that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like and some will roost in like old trees or a chimney or in a cave or something. But swallows will, they'll just spend a significant part of the day just perched up.
And you'll see them just sitting there on a branch or on a wire or something. Yeah, the swifts are always zipping around. I just hadn't realized. Have you heard of this? That people would. I mean, I know that in Southern Europe, there's a lot of eating. I guess in France too, eating songbirds, which always strikes us as kind of weird. But that there were people would purposely build structures to have swifts and other parts of Europe sparrows and
get the eggs
and starlings. No, to get the fledglings.
Oh.
Kind of like people do dovecotes to get the squab from pigeons. And
I saw on one of the YouTubes or whatever you sent me, I saw the design of the buildings, how they had these wooden doors and they could
so the little holes you can come in the inside of the tower and access the nest.
I didn't like it.
I saw in Cambodia kids would just come up to the bus with like trays of barbecued or like roasted songbirds.
There you go. I mean, what was it, Francois?
Well, I was thinking that we could build those same kind of nesting sites in buildings and just not have that door in there. So that was fun.
What is it in France? That's ortolan is the bird. Ortolan.
I'm mostly vegetarian, so I really don't know.
No, I'm totally vegetarian. But ortolan is a songbird, and supposedly you're supposed to eat it with a napkin over your head.
Oh dear.
The notion being that you don't want God to see that you're eating something so cute and pretty.
That's terrible. And
Francois Mitterrand, who was the Prime Minister of France, who's dying of cancer or something, his last meal he wanted to be ortolan. So it's a huge conservation problem in Europe now that especially in Cyprus and other places in Southern Europe where it's like stopover places for migrating songbirds. People just like hoover them up, vacuum them up for the trade.
I really want to see a photo of someone eating that with a towel over their head.
Oh Lord. I'm going to include one other little thing that we didn't get a chance to listen to ahead of time, but Nick Horn is studying marine ecology in Aberdeen, Scotland. And I had been following some of his tweets about, he studies in particular dolphins in the Aberdeen Harbor. I thought that was interesting in and of itself. And then I asked him to record a little bit and send it to us. And then he mentioned the dolphins there's a sort of a seawall in the harbor that the dolphins will use in their hunting. Or I don't know how we call hunting, I guess, with dolphins, where they'll push fish up against it.
Yes.
And then
like it's a reef or something.
Yeah. And
back them into a corner.
And then eat them against that wall in the harbor.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nicholas Horn, and I'm currently enrolled on a master's degree course at University of Aberdeen. I'm going to be undertaking a study of the bottlenose dolphins that are here seen in the harbour regularly, using some photo identification techniques. The harbour here in Aberdeen is an extremely busy port. It has ferries using several routes, but by far the biggest cause of boat traffic here is the massive oil industry in the North Sea, which gives Aberdeen the title the energy capital of Europe. Aberdeen Harbour is located at the mouth of the River Dee. This river has salmon runs throughout the year, and as these are the largest bottlenose dolphins in the world, big nutritious fish like salmon are extremely important to them. The unique thing with the dolphins in Aberdeen Harbour is that it looks like they're using the harbour itself to their advantage. Two harbour walls, large structures that are used to protect the harbour from rough seas, span the mouth of the river, and the gap between the two acts as a sort of funnel for the salmon. The dolphins are seen to be using this situation by splitting into two groups, one spanning the gap between the walls to wait for the salmon, and the others jumping, splashing and chasing to corral the salmon towards the others. Currently what we know about the dolphins that hunt in the harbour are that they're from a population of dolphins that travel along the east coast of Scotland. They're based north of Aberdeen in the Moray Firth. They regularly use Aberdeen Harbour as a hunting spot, and my research will be using fin identification to find out how many and which individuals are using the hunting grounds. Aberdeen Harbour has had a long history of boat traffic. With fishing being prevalent before the oil industry, the area has always been an extremely busy place for boating. There are, however, plans to expand the harbour, and the effects of this expansion on the dolphins are unknown. The thing to remember with this population is that the hunting ground is not the only place they forage, and it is created by the harbour itself, so the effects of the expansion could be very small on the overall population, which spans such a large area. Locals in Aberdeen visit Torry Battery, the best spot for sighting dolphins, quite regularly. Many people going out there with their cameras and getting some great photos. What surprises me upon arriving in Aberdeen is how little the rest of the city and the country know about these dolphins. Many people visit Florida and Mexico to see bottlenose dolphins when they can see them right here in the UK. The Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, or the RSPB, here in the UK have set up a dolphin watch scheme where volunteers go to Torry Battery to talk about the dolphins with the locals and raise awareness for the conservation issues in the marine environment.
Thanks to Helena for coming by and talking with us.
Thank you.
Again, I apologize for my rudeness and not being here from the start.
He's a dedicated public servant. Trying to channel the needs of the city into the response of the park system.
It's true, it was good because a few of these people were talking about their parks and feeling neglected in these small parks, and I just took notes, and I will schedule some public programs in their parks. So in the parks,
on.
you know.
Maybe some of these parks are places that could be biophily spots.
I was just thinking, can I have a list of these parks so we can put them on our map?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. You know, one of the parks I'd never heard of, and I feel ashamed to say that, but I mean, it's a 6-acre park, right?
Wow.
McMichael Park in East Falls, and you know, it's just
that's a pretty good chunk of land, 6 acres.
Yeah, I mean, you granted, like it's half a mile from a 1,900-acre park, so hence it gets overlooked. But you know, and it's probably no understory. It's just I looked, you know, when they're talking about it, I brought it up on Google Earth, and it's probably just one of these parks that, you know, there's no understory, just some shade trees, and you know, you're fine there. But why not, you know, go there and see what's there? You know, it's funny if you know, I'm a lifelong resident of the city, and you know, I've always wanted to work for the park system, and you would think I would know pretty much every park in the city, but a 6-acre park in
there's a lot of little parks.
The 5th largest city in America with a notoriously large park system can escape your attention.
Yeah.
You know?
I learned, I mean, I don't have your kind of profession or background in this, but I found myself learning about new parks and being like, wait, where is that? And people always assume because it's much more intimate for them. Like if I were talking about Malcolm X Park to somebody in East Falls, they would have no idea what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, someone talking about, I don't know, sort of Mount Vernon Park that's in Vernon Park.
Fairmount, right?
Vernon Square, something like that. Never mind, I'll cut that up. But yeah, so it's easy to it's a big city. It's easy to lose track of these things. Anyhow, so let's wrap up. Thanks again for listening. If you do want to get in touch with us, you can write us an email at urbanwildlifecast@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter at urbwildlifecast. Find us on Facebook. Let us know what you think of the show and anything else you'd like us to add. We're going to be posting a lot of fun stuff on social media about the Biophilic Cities Network, about Biophilly, about swifts, and about wall lizards, and about dolphins in Aberdeen Harbor, which you'll listen to in a minute after we're done with this part of the episode. And with that, thanks a lot. And
when will this come out? Will this come out right? I'm leaving in a week.
This will probably come out after. No, this will come out while you're in Australia.
Yeah, so this will come out while I'm in Australia. So holler at me, Tony croasdale@gmail.com. CROASDLE@gmail. That's my personal email. Giving it out. Holler at me if you're in Australia. You want to hang out. Show me some cool wildlife. I'll be between Sydney and Cairns, but hey, flights are fairly cheap in Australia. Maybe I'll go visit you in Perth. Who knows? I might get crazy.